Hi guys. All right, so I'm gonna continue my talk on the room dynamics. Not because I want to dwell on, not because I want everyone to go on this endless healing journey and quest or anything like that, but because I want you guys to understand that everybody goes through these things, and it is not what happens, but how you deal with it that you overcome. So, a lot of you, when you're talking to me, you're like, you shared my story, or this is my experience, or along those lines, you say something similar, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I want you to relate to the fact that I am not my body, that we share these experiences, and that universal experience is just that. It's universal experience. Everybody goes through the same things, right? So, um, today I'm going to talk to you guys about how I coped with life, my extreme independence. Because you think independence is something that should be, celebrated. Yeah, don't let anybody in. You can handle your own shit. Woo! Right? Well, here's what I said. If you remember correctly, I said there are two extremes to coping with abandonment and rejection. One is to attach and not be able to let go. That's codependent, right? And the other, okay, is the extreme independence where you have difficulty letting things in. Both of these are coping mechanisms. Both of these things are extreme versions, and neither one of them are healthy. You have to meet in the middle, and this is difficult. So I'm going to talk about both of these and let you know that I've been one and I've been the other. But I've been one as a child, and as an adult, I was completely another. Okay? So I'm going to tell you a little bit of my history, just so you can have an idea that you're not alone. First and foremost, okay, as a small child, my father was absolutely not in the picture. For some of you, it may look differently. For some of you, your father may have been in the picture, but, was always working or neglectful, or, for some of you, it's not the case. But in my case, my father was absolutely not there. Very rarely did he show up in our lives. And as such, that was one thing that I was fortunate enough not to have that much exposure to. Okay? So what that meant was that my mother had to do a lot of the working, a lot of the, shuffling me around and that kind of thing. So as a child, infant, I had to be shuffled around from babysitter to babysitter. Every time that I was separated from my mother, I had some of the most horrible experiences from my sitter. So I've had a sitter that fondled me in my diapers. I had sitters that beat me, and that my grandmother discovered the ear marks. I'm only 2, mind you. And she did, I'm not even old enough to talk, and I have like deeply embedded nail marks from where they have, tried to hush me. And they used to tell my mom that I was falling all the time, that I was just a clumsy baby, that I'd get over it, to explain the bruises on my body. I've also had babysitters that were alcoholics. So she came to pick me up. I'm 1.5, and my very first experience as a drunk was at 1.5, where I had completely just sipped the beer, and when she came to pick me up, I'm like this, God, I can't even walk yet, and I'm already drunk. Okay? So needless to say that every single time that I was separated from my mother, horrible things would happen. Okay? We fast forward. My mother worked 2 jobs. She tried desperately to try to make ends meet. She was struggling. My father was not in the picture. Her extreme independence, she wouldn't ask him for a thing. Okay, so he got away scot-free. He never had to pay a cent. He never had to do anything for me. My mother was like, nah, I got this. Okay, so you can understand where I get it from? Yes? All right. So in the process, my mother had a complete and total nervous breakdown. First of all, because I'm protesting. I'm protesting big time. Every single time that she takes me to babysitter, I'm screaming bloody murder. She's trying to work, and at the same time, something in her spirit knows, because she's also an empath, she knows something's wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on it. You know, in fact, it was my grandmother who pointed out the nail marks behind my ear and why I would scream bloody murder every time I was dropped off at that particular sitter at the time. And so she also, you know, woman's intuition, because I come from a goddess, right? One time she said she just knew to pick me up. She just knew. Spidey sense goes off. I did the same thing for my daughter. So her spidey sense goes off. And she finds me on a balcony in company of a 5-year-old because my babysitter was out talking to the neighbor somewhere. So the 5-year-old is taking care of the 18-month-old, and we're on a balcony, which we could have easily fallen through and off. Okay? So I'm not trying to paint this picture as like a bad thing. I'm just trying to describe the dynamics from which I emerged. And so my mom had a complete and total nervous breakdown, because no matter what she did, no matter how far she tried to get ahead, you know, it was horrible. It was one situation after the other. I mean, you can only afford but so much, and you get what you pay for, and I had lousy from complete strangers. Okay? As such, she has this nervous breakdown. So again, I'm separated from my mother in that moment. And you have to understand, first there's no dad, then there's no mom. Now, fortunately, my aunt took me in, and it was a very good time in my life for a little while, in which my aunt was newly married to a wonderful, amazing man who I still consider to be my uncle, and I will never disrespect in any other way. I was too little to know the difference, so I called him Dad, because I associated men with Dad. And he taught me how to put on my shoes correctly, because I was dyslexic, and so I still put them on backwards. So, I mean, just so you can understand, this is somebody that I will always respect for forever and ever. Okay? And my mom and my aunt had this arrangement. While my mom stayed in this hospital, my mom stayed there. My aunt would pick her up so that we could spend time together. But meanwhile, my mom is a complete vegetable and needs that time. All right? So I'm too little to understand all of these dynamics, but for a little while, my life was stable. And then they got divorced. They got divorced, and I got shuffled back to my mother. So as a result, I developed a dependency on my mother, an extreme dependency, a codependency, in which she couldn't even get air to breathe because I'd be like, "Where are you going? Don't leave me. Please don't do that." And one time, I'll never forget this, she was trying to hurry out so she could get some errands done without me. And I ran after her, and she hurried up and closed the door. Well, she hurried up and closed the door just in time for me to knock out my teeth, because I slammed them on the doorknob trying to get to her, because I was so desperate. Please don't leave me. All right? So at that point in my life, I'm only 5, but I was a very codependent mess due to all that trauma that I had been through as a baby. So she seeks help of the psychiatrist, okay? And the psychiatrist said exactly what I'm going to tell you. You need to, if you are codependent, learn to be alone. You need to lean into being alone. Do not give in to this needy, which to this day still gives me the heebie-jeebies. I'm not good with needy, okay? Obviously, it has to do with how I was raised and what happened in my childhood. So this is the heebie-jeebie thing that I was just like, okay? That's where it's coming from. Now I understand it. Before, I just ran from it. I didn't get it. I just didn't like needy people. Probably because it irritated every single demon I've had as a baby. Capiche? So, the psychiatrist says, you need to do this. So, what does my mom do? My mom decides to put me on an airplane to go visit my grandmother without her. Because at this point, I cannot be separated from my mom. Okay? I would cling to her for dear life. I slept in the same bed because I was terrified to be, I had my own bedroom. I was terrified to be without her. Okay? This doesn't sound like the Cindy you know at all, right? Because this is the child I was. Okay? So she sends me to our country, and she puts me on a plane, and obviously there were different times. You wouldn't do this now, but back in the day, Pan Am, okay, airlines, the stewardess would take care of the kids, and they would be in charge of taking care of you from one flight to the next, and then making sure you're deposited to your person on the other side of wherever in the world you were going. Well, I'm going to be really honest, you guys. It was the most terrifying experience of my life to have to let go of my mother. Like, I don't think you understand. Like, I slept in the same bed with this woman because I was afraid to be alone, because I never knew what would happen when we were departed. Because every single time that we were parted, my life went to shit. And I mean shit. Like shit. Okay? So, as a result, you can see that that was scary. It was so bad. I'm only five, okay? And I love my grandmother, but at the same time, it was that bad. It was so bad, I peed on the plane. Yeah, peed on the plane, because I was that scared to be alone. Okay? Embarrassing as it is, that's what I did. Okay? Fortunately, I happened to be on the plane with two little older people who happened to look out for me, and they helped me get cleaned up and fixed me up, and it was okay. My little overnight bag and everything was taken care of, and I was eventually deposited to my grandmother. Okay? So that was kind of a cool way of getting rid of my dependency on her, because even though I was clinging to my mother, and even though my mom was pretty cool, dude, grandma? That was the reward, okay? So, obviously I've told you guys that the grandmother is actually the mother, not the mother. So my connection to my grandmother was established. Like, I was her child, and it was understood. It is what it is. Like I said, mothers don't actually carry their own eggs. They're carrying their grandmothers. And as such, I had a great time. Okay? And I came back, and I realized that it wasn't so scary to be without my mom. It wasn't. In fact, it turned out to be the best experience ever. I got to horseback ride. I got to go swim in pools, and I got to be exposed to nature, and I got to play with, like, my grandmother got me my own miniature chickens. Did you know those exist? I had everything. Like, it was so fun that I realized that it was okay to let go. So it was a very, very helpful experience. Okay? And as such, when I came back, I told my mom, I'm ready to sleep in my own bed now. I'm not scared. Okay? So I understood that. And what I did as a result was develop extreme independence. This was my coping mechanism. I understood one thing. Everything may not be stable, but I could count on me. Can't count on anybody else. You can't count on your mother. You can't count on your father. And if you can't count on the two people that are responsible for raising you, then you can't count on anybody. Now, I understand the reasoning, but I'm trying to help you understand where I came from. So I became super, super, super independent. To date, still am. Okay? And what that meant was, during my healing journey, it meant realizing that that was not healthy either. Although it helped me on a lot of different things. And so I will give you its benefits. First and foremost, no one can ever get over on you. Romantically, if they don't align, pa fuera, mira, puerta, open. Get the fuck out. I'm not tolerating if you don't like. So my boundaries, at least in that sense, were established, and it was easy. Like I said, my heart's never been broken, but I also never tolerated anything. In fact, that's why I used to play with narcissists, because I would, make them docile. Okay? So it is what it is, but I'm trying to tell you that after a while, I had to learn that this was not healthy. So it's so funny that I use this movie, but I will use this movie as an example. It's an old movie. Some of you are not even old enough to know that it exists. Some of you may have heard of it. Some of you may not have. But it was called Something's Gotta Give. And if those of you who don't know that movie, it's with Diane Keaton and Jack Nicholson. I forgot who the other young lady is. She's younger. And it was a scene in which the mother had her heart broken so badly. And the daughter simply says, you see, Mom, this is exactly why you never let them in. You always have the upper hand. They will always like you more than you like them. And you keep it that way so that the dynamic is always in balance in your favor. So in that moment, I recognized myself as the daughter. And I was like, dude, that's my attitude, 100%. That's why it's never broken. Like, it's always me first, okay? And that's when Diane Keaton's character gave the answer that shook my world. Okay? And the answer is as follows. Baby, wrong. Incorrect. Wrong. Because here's the thing. My heart may be broken now. It may be shattered in pieces. But I would never trade the experience I've had for anything in the world. I would rather have loved than never to have loved at all. And as broken as I am, I would not trade this experience for the world. And I actually feel really bad for you because you're not letting anyone in. Well, hello. That message was for me. And in that moment, I was like, oh, wow, I've never let anybody in. Everyone's always loved me. I've never loved them back. Like, I like them enough to tolerate them for my growth, but I've never let anybody in. In fact, I've never been in love. And I'm looking at her like, I'm correct. I've never had my heart broken. That's accurate. But I've also never let anybody in. Ever. So in result, my conclusion was I hadn't lived. And it was a hard pill to swallow because I hadn't lived. Can you understand that? I really hadn't, because she was right. Even if your heart was broken, wouldn't you have rather have had the experience of love than never to have loved at all? And so I realized in that moment that what I needed to do was scary for me. See, cutting people off was easy. Not meeting them was easy. My friend called me the tourniquet. That was her nickname for me. Okay? I know how to let people go. Okay? But letting someone in and saying, hey, yeah, I can get down with this. I can let you love me. I'll love you back. I'll be vulnerable. I'll let this exchange of power, And you got to understand why that was so scary. It's because if your whole life has been a disappointment, the people that love you let you down time and time again, and you could only trust, like, my people that I could trust, okay, amounted to my grandmother, my uncle who died in order to become my daughter. So then it became my daughter and my son, and that was it. There was no other, okay? And my aunt, whom eventually, when I told her that her husband had been hitting on me the whole time, that he tried to feel me up, that he made my teenage years miserable. And I tried to tell her, instead of listening to me, she stopped talking to me. So she fit the mold. Whoever you let trust, that's who's going to break you. Now, in retrospect, now I can tell you that these wounds were necessary. They played the roles that they needed to play in order for me to see what was going on in my construct. But as far as I was concerned, letting someone in was hard, because every person that I've ever had to let in had let me down. And not just let me down in a little way, I mean let me down in the worst way. Because my aunt was like a mother and a sister to me, because my mom had raised my aunt. So she was both my sister and my mother, and that's who turned her back on me for her husband, who was a jackass, who still cheats on her. Okay? Or my mom, who was so depressed that as badly as she wanted to be there for me, did the best she could. And I'm not coming down on her, but for a long time I resented that, because despite all of that, I was a good kid. Or my dad, who, thank God, in retrospect, he wasn't part of my life, and that I wasn't as screwed up as my brothers and sisters had been by his interaction. So it was a blessing in disguise, but you don't understand that as a child, do you? So when I tell you that your ego is actually protecting you from the pain, and that your inner child is boss, and that ego is willing to be the scariest demon in the world, like a Beauty and the Beast type style thing, to protect against this. This is actually what rises up when you're triggered. This is the beast within. It's protecting the inner child, because it doesn't want you to go through that ever again. Ever. Okay? So that was scary. And the answer is still the same. If you want to heal extreme independence, you have to do the opposite and let someone in. If you want to heal codependency, you have to do the opposite and get comfortable being alone. You have to get rid of that needy feeling. You have to. You have to be okay with your own company. You cannot be dependent on them to make you happy. This is wrong. So wrong. Mean that, okay? You got to get rid of that trait. Just like the other one, the extreme independence without letting anyone in. Just as wrong, because you're no longer that child. You're no longer in those experiences, and it is not fair to bleed on people that have not cut you. Everyone deserves a clean slate, not your wounded projections. So, the answer is always the same. Do the opposite of what you're comfortable with, and you will heal. Because you will discover, like I did as a child, for being codependent, that actually my independence was quite fun. It was. It was fun. You have no idea. I went horseback riding by myself. I climbed trees and trails. Oh my gosh, I had a great time with my own company. Okay? And at the same time, the extreme independence led me to that one moment where I realized, oh my gosh, I've never let anybody in. I've never been in love. They've loved me. I certainly haven't been in love with them. At least not as was described in that, and I know it was romanticized, and I know it was a movie, but I always like to think that a lot of these authors create fiction so that you can see the greater message in them. And that's what makes them great movies, or that's what makes them great learning experiences. So again, you're going to have to learn to do the opposite. You're going to have to let go, and you're going to have to understand you set up all of these characters on purpose so you can see yourself. And as such, you are no longer there and doing the opposite of what's comfortable. Doing the extreme opposite of what's comfortable is going to be necessary in order to overcome any of these situations, but you can overcome them easily because you really just put on a costume long enough to help. Because I know my story is not unique. I know that there are people that have had similar things. Not everybody has had them as bad. That's very good for you. However, in order for me to be able to stand here and say, this is how I did this, and this is how I did that, and this is how I made peace with this, and I love all of these things because without them, I don't discover who I am, and I am cool with it, that's the part that I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for you all to do. More so than anything else in the world, I need you guys to appreciate everything, especially the darkness, especially the parts where I want you to look back now in retrospect and see how they led to becoming who you are and make peace with these things, but do not let them make you its servant. Do not judge your experiences. Understand that your triggers are happening for you, not against you. If you are triggered by something, it's because you need to identify with this part of the story right away. The story is controlled by you. This is what you need to do. Your feelings come from you. No one is doing anything for you, or I guess they are for you. No one's doing anything to you, okay? They are trying to show you what you need to fix. There is nothing else in this world except the mirror from which you perceive your thoughts. You are in the middle of a multi-dimensional screen looking at your experience all the time, left and right, left and right. And until you have made peace with everything you are, you're going to be triggered. You're going to be susceptible to being a victim to your story. Because it's what we do. We disassociate from it so that we have someone else to blame. That's the ego's greatest trick. But if you're going to get to your true self, beyond your imagined identity, first you have to recognize your experience, then you have to own it, then you have to forgive everything in it because every single component was required for you to wake up. And then lastly, whatever it is that you're doing, you need to learn how to do the opposite. If you're needy and clingy, please stop. If you base your joy on the fact that you are with someone else, you're doing it wrong. You're actually placing the burden of making you happy on them. This is incorrect. At the same time, we are designed so that we can see each other. So we are designed for connection, so the extreme independence is wrong either. I need you to meet me in the middle. I need you to meet me in the middle where you can love with absolute detachment. Okay? True love is freedom. It's freedom, freedom, freedom. If it is not freedom because you're trying to force someone to love you, or if it's not freedom because you're trying to force anything into place, or you want to own something, or you need them to make you happy, or it's interdependent and connected, or you need a reason to love somebody, this is not love in the least. You want to love somebody just because of who they are. Why? Because you want the same thing, and this is how the mirror itself can mirror you back so you can see your mastery. But if you are so dependent on this person for your joy, this is wrong. It's not going to work. It's not fair. Okay? Most people run from this, okay? And with the wound dynamics, someone who's been abandoned and rejected will attract a withdrawer on purpose in order to balance these energies out. I would know because I ended up with really obsessed people my whole life. It was not cool. In fact, the only reason that I even allowed myself to fall in love with someone was because there was no ownership involved. It was complete free will choice, which is exactly what you want in a relationship. But you must be what you want to receive. You must become aware that your story is on display. You must realize that whoever you are in a partnership with, Your job is to recognize the oneness, to recognize that they will show you what you don't know that you are thinking, so that you either know what to uphold and appreciate or what you have to fix. But it's one, not two. When you can be that one, and I mean this sincerely, it's impossible for them to get you out of their mind. Why? Because you're the person inside of them, not the person outside. It's very important that you understand that this body is merely an avatar from which you are using to interact with your mind. And as such, the true juice, the real juju power, that which they cannot forget what you are and who you are, comes from you knowing who you are. And that's the most important part. Uh-oh, guys. I'm running out of juice. Hang on one second. Someone said to me recently that I don't freak out when my videos don't go perfectly, because they can tell that I just kind of freestyle everything, and I really do. Okay, I'm connected, y'all. My bad. All right. Okay. So can you follow along with what I mean? So if you're working on healing these things, know that it's not forever. The easiest, fastest way is to do the opposite of what you're comfortable with. You all will recognize your wound behavior because it's either extreme, and you need to meet in the middle. You are looking to be unapologetically yourself, and you do want your free expression, but you also have to understand that it is not cool to chase people down. It is not cool to make them dependent on your happiness, and vice versa. Instead, in a healthy relationship, what happens is this person loves themselves, and you attracted this person who loves themselves, and this gives you the ability to love one another in harmony, so that neither is responsible for their joy. Each maintains individual lives as well as great times together. And you add to each other's joy. You work on each other's intimacy. You have a very healthy, symbiotic relationship that is not one extreme or the other. You meet in the middle in absolute freedom. That if you're trying to attract someone, your job is to know you're the one. And that's it. Know you're the one and recognize yourself in them, because you are their source. I told you this already. I'll say it again and again and again and again. Everything outside of you are illusions of you. I can't stress this enough. We're going to cover it in class on Saturday. We're going to describe what's going on. But everywhere that you are told, know thyself, it's because thyself, or what you think thyself is, okay, is the veil. This is the patterns, the infinite patterns that are made into other people, so you can recognize yourself. That's it right there. And so when you understand that, then you don't see bodies, you see walking thought bubbles. You see your memories on display everywhere. And when you're in love with that, my God, is it beautiful? Because everybody you talk to is you. In the most beautiful way. You'll see your mannerisms, you'll see how somebody talks, you'll see their expressions, you'll see their passion, all the things you love about yourself. You're going to see in infinite patterns over and over and over again, until you see nothing but beauty. And the truth is, this is already true of everyone. If only you understood who you were. If only you no longer were upset over your experiences. If only you weren't rejecting the things that made you you. If you could just accept the beauty of these experiences. If you can accept that every single human being played the role that they needed to, so you can discover who you are, then there is no guilt, there is no blame. Forgiveness sets in. You understand your attraction to people. You're not triggered. You want to be trigger free in relationship? You need to be trigger free within, because the ego can't have any ammunition. And the only way the ego doesn't have any ammunition is for you to be at peace with who you are, for you to be at peace with your experiences. And even though this sounded like a sob story, I didn't tell it like a sob story. I actually said, these are the experiences that made me me. And I'm good with it. I'm good with it. Okay? So I hope this helps. I'm going to add it to my wound series. Maybe I'll put everything together. Okay? Just so that you can know that this is not an endless journey. And if you want to be in a healthy relationship, you're going to have to love the aspects of yourself that you dislike the most painful aspects of your experience. You're going to have to find the value in them. And when you have that, it changes the dynamics because you can't be rejected. You can't be rejected because you're not rejecting yourself. It's an exact reflection. So like if you're still mad at mommy and daddy for what they did, you're screwed. Because mommy and daddy are going to be turned into several different dynamics, and you think every single time there's another human being? No. Your experiences are on display, and this is what your ego is going to use to sabotage your relationships. You have to know yourself to understand that. When you do, you're unfuckwithable. That's the truth. You're unfuckwithable because you're okay with everything you are. And as such, you know what happens? You meet people that are like, I like your spunk. I like your fire. I like this about you. I can't believe you're still standing after all that stuff. That's pretty cool. You're a badass. Whatever. You will hear it. Why? Because it's the truth. It's the truth. Honestly, and I want to say this to anybody who can relate to my story or who's had worse, I want to tell you something. You're the big guns. You're the legends. You were forged in the fires of affliction in childhood, and you mastered those things. But you are no longer there, so whatever compensation tools you use to survive, you no longer need, and you're going to have to ditch the fear. Because fear is the only obstacle you will ever have to being in union with anyone. It's the only obstacle. Most of you, you get into a relationship and you're censored because you're afraid to lose them. That needs to stop right now. I don't care if you're afraid to lose them. Be you. Because you want to be loved for who you are. Not the watered down version of you who plays small because you're afraid to lose someone. That's not love. You cannot lose yourself if you understand who you are. You cannot lose yourself in anything if you respect and choose yourself first. But there is some work that needs to be done. There is some forgiveness that needs to be done. There's some acceptance that needs to be had. But this work right here, it doesn't take forever. It is your superpower. This is how you become the kryptonite inside anybody and everybody. And I mean this sincerely when I say this. I mean you're the kryptonite, okay? There's always one woman or one man that lights your soul on fire, that brings you to your knees and helps you awaken. And you want to be sure to be that one. You don't want to enable weakness. You want to light their fire. And once you do that, believe me, even if they acted like an ass, they will regret it for the rest of their life. But make sure that you choose yourself rather than enable the behavior that they're displaying unconsciously. Okay? All right. So I hope that was good. Let me see, you guys. My kids are always like, Mom, why you gotta be staring at people? Yes, Kathy. Or is that Jennifer? No, Jen. That's funny. That's funny. Yes, I stare at people the same way only because now I know everything is me. So I love everything. Like I'm not even close to being fooled by the illusion of others anymore. I can't. Like my brain isn't creative. Today, you guys, I met a new person. Her name was Susie, and I instantly knew that she was my family. And I was like, Suze, that's my sister's name. You're totally my family. Whatever you have to say, I know you're meant to talk to me. Sure enough, everything that she said was my experience to the T. It's usually what happens. And so I just know. Why? Because I'm the constant of my world. And this is true of everybody. I just know it. So If you are ready to discover this, okay, being the one is not some cliche dating advice, although I can give it. It's not what this is. Being the one means I understand how I am one expressing as the many. I understand how I am the whole universe. I've understood how my story makes every single person in the world. And I've understood how I am God and outside is my son Christ. It is the only thing on display, and I must always recognize their divinity as well as mine and understand that the only thing on display is experience. Yours. As such, once you love yourself and you understand that, the veil collapses. Your personal apocalypse, so to speak, happens. The destruction of the world as you know it occurs. And then, although it looks as if nothing has changed, everything changes. You go from 3D inside the box to 5D source perspective, able to look at everything from a higher level perspective and understanding and appreciation of everything rather than victim mode. So this part is up to you. Are you willing to climb the mountain that is you and own your story? Because that's what we're here to do. Okay? All right, you guys. Let me see. I have one more thing to do is my question about motion and in rest. I will write up my answer, but here's what I'm going to say. Your proof of mastery is your ability to rest while others carry out your will. So others are doing the motion while you rest. So that's the answer, you guys. Hope you enjoyed that. And I will be talking to you soon, and I'll be seeing you on Saturday. Yes? Love you.